The cockpit is no bigger than a coffin. Sunrise is still an hour away, and the instrument panel casts a weak, ghostly glow across the frost-smeared canopy. Inside, a 19-year-old Army aviator sits at Chiran airfield, clutching a letter he just finished writing. The ink is still damp. A 1,000-stitch belt, a *Senenbari*, is wrapped tightly around his belly, each not a prayer from a woman in his hometown. The ritual begins, both intimate and deeply unsettling. A small cup of sake is offered, the last he'll ever taste. A squadron mate, trying desperately not to cry, knots a white *Hachimaki* headband around his forehead. Outside, in the pre-dawn chill, mechanics are lashing a 250-kilogram bomb beneath the fuselage of his Ki-43 fighter plane. The bomb is not designed to be dropped. It's designed to be delivered. Officers speak in hushed, reverent tones about honor and the spirit of Yamato. A Shinto priest murmurs a blessing for his journey. The ground crew shouts over the coughing, sputtering engines as they roar to life, one by one. The air is thick with the smell of high-octane fuel and the cold, metallic scent of impending doom. He is scheduled to die today. To understand this moment, we must understand the context. It is April 1945. The battle for Okinawa is raging, a brutal, final stand in the Pacific War. This is the height of the Kikusui attacks, the floating chrysanthemums. The American invasion fleet is a massive steel city anchored off the coast, but it's protected by a deadly ring of radar picket destroyers. These ships are the first line of defense, constantly scanning the skies. Above them, American combat air patrol fighters, Hellcats and Corsairs prowl like sharks waiting for any sign of an incoming threat. And closer to the fleet, the sky itself becomes a forest of steel, a dense wall of anti-aircraft fire, or flak, that rips apart anything that dares to fly through it. From bases across Kyushu and the southern tip of Kagoshima, these special attack units, the *Takotai, are launched in waves. The pilots are overwhelmingly young, many still in their teens, with only fragile, rushed training. Their planes are often outdated, stripped of non-essential equipment to save weight. They are given just enough fuel for a one-way trip. The mission is not to engage in a dogfight, not to drop a bomb and return. The mission is impact. The doctrine itself was a desperate strategy born from a losing war. The plan was terrifyingly simple. After takeoff, they would fly at wave-top level across the East China Sea, staying low to evade the enemy's radar for as long as possible. Once they neared the target area, they would use whatever cloud cover they could find to climb to altitude. Then came the final act, a steep, high-speed dive. The pilot would aim his entire aircraft at an enemy warship, becoming a single guided projectile of flesh and metal. In that final plunge, the bomb, the plane, and the pilot become one. But who was the boy behind the headband? Before the uniform and the fatal mission, there was a life. He grew up on a farm surrounded by the rhythm of the seasons. He remembered his teacher's passionate speeches about duty to the emperor and the divine land of Japan. He remembered the posters, the patriotic songs, the overwhelming pressure to serve. The letter he just wrote to his mother is a masterpiece of concealment. Beneath the elegant, practiced calligraphy, he hides his crippling fear, his questions, his desire to live. He writes of cherry blossoms and honor, but not of the churning in his stomach or the cold sweat on his palms. The dissonance is everywhere. As the mechanics paint the bold red circle of the rising sun on his plane's tail, he can see the cherry trees at the edge of the airfield blooming, in a riot of pink and white, utterly indifferent to the human drama unfolding beneath them. They are a symbol of a life he is about to leave behind, a life as beautiful and fleeting as the blossoms themselves. The moment arrives. The mechanics give a final check, a final salute, and step back. The wheel chocks are pulled away. The runway stretches out before him, a dark ribbon marked only by faint lanterns. He takes a last shaky breath. Throttle forward. The engine screams. The tail lifts. The lanterns blur into streaks of light. The runway vanishes beneath him. A few seconds later, the shoreline of Japan falls away, swallowed by a cold, gray sea. He banks the aircraft and turns south, flying towards an enemy horizon he has never seen before and a fate that has been chosen for him. The formation climbs, a silent arrow aimed at the dawn. Below us, the sea is a wrinkled sheet of steel gray. My wingman, Kenji, holds his position just off my right, his canopy a dark eye watching mine. The leader waggles his wings, a silent command, and we dip lower, hugging the waves to stay beneath their invisible net. There's no chatter on the radio, just the constant, deep-throated growl of the engine vibrating up through the solace of my boots, a living thing beneath my feet. The air in the cockpit is thick with the smell of oil and high-octane fuel. Frost that had feathered the inside of the canopy now melts, tracing tiny rivers across the plexiglass, distorting the world outside into a watery blur. We're flying on instruments and instinct. The compass needle quivers, a nervous heart, and I check it against the wristwatch strapped over my glove. Time and heading. That's all that matters. The sun, a pale disk, rises behind the clouds, casting a flat, featureless light that bleeds the horizon into the sea. Everything is the same shade of gray. It's a disorienting, infinite emptiness. Then I notice it. I bank slightly, searching. Kenji's spot is empty, just empty sky where his plane should be. I scan the horizon, my gut twisting. Did I miss a signal? Did he fall back? There's nothing. Just the endless ocean and the two planes ahead of me, pressing on. The needle on my fuel gauge seems to drift lower faster than it should. Or is it just my imagination? The rising sun is our enemy now, painting our silhouettes against the high overcast we've climbed to meet. Then, a flicker. Far ahead, a gray speck on the water. It's impossibly small, a mote of dust, but it grows. It resolves into a ship, sharp and angular, a destroyer. Smaller, stubbier shapes move around it, gunboats. A picket line. They've seen us. Above them, more specks, high in the sun. My breath catches. They aren't birds. They roll and dive, wings catching the light. Corsairs, hellcats, the sky erupts. The serenity is shattered by threads of light, tracers arcing lazily towards us, then zipping past with a terrifying hiss. Puffs of black and white smoke blossom in the air around us, ugly flowers in a garden of death. Each one is a silent clap of thunder I feel in my chest. Orange flashes bloom where a shell detonates, a beautiful, terrible firework. The leader rocks his wings violently, the signal to attack. I shove the control stick forward and the nose drops. The horizon tilts crazily, the gray sea rushing up to meet me. The bomb slung under my belly sings, a high-pitched whine that rises in pitch as we accelerate. The altimeter needle begins to unwind like a frantic clock, counting down my life. My mind flashes to the photograph tucked in my flight suit. My mother, smiling. I see her receiving a small wooden box filled with nothing but air and a few ashes. A promise I made to Kenji last night, sharing a final cup of sake, that we would see the cherry blossoms bloom again. That promise turns to dust in my mouth. Adrenaline burns away the fear, leaving only a cold, sharp focus. I pick my target. Not the small boats, but the destroyer, slicing a clean white wake through the water. Its stacks and bridge fill my gunsight. I push the throttle to the firewall, the engine screaming in protest. The propeller becomes a shimmering, invisible disc. The dive steepens. I'm a stone dropped from heaven. The world narrows to that single point in my sight. The puffs of flak are closer now, walking a line of black smoke directly towards me. The cockpit fills with a blinding white light as their guns find my path. The airframe shudders violently, the vibration so intense it feels like the plane is tearing itself apart. But I don't pull up. I can't. My thumb is on the release. The ship grows larger, details becoming sharp, clear. I see men on the deck, small figures running. I am committed. Impact is inevitable. Strapped in, every rivet screaming. The dive steepens, the airframe shuddering like a beast in its death throes. The sky, once a brilliant, cold blue, is now a smear of black flak and tracers. The canopy suddenly blurs, smeared with hot black oil from a hit somewhere on the engine cowling. The smell punches through the slipstream, a nauseating cocktail of hot metal, cordite and burning fuel that stings the nostrils and coats the back of the throat. My world shrinks to the vibration in the stick, the desperate dance of my feet on the rudder pedals. A Bofors burst, a string of angry red lights, stitches its way across the sky and takes a vicious bite out of my right wing. The plane lurches violently. The trim goes wild, trying to wrench the stick from my grip. I fight it, muscles screaming, wrestling the nose back down. The bomb, a half-ton of pure destruction slung under the fuselage, was meant to fly true, a perfect extension of my will. But now, with the damaged wing, it feels like an anchor, pulling the nose through a sickening wobble. I have to compensate, have to predict its skewed trajectory. My eyes are glued to the gunsight, a glowing pipper superimposed over the steel-gray deck of the destroyer below. It's growing with terrifying speed. I hold the sight steady on the bridge, the nerve center of the ship. But the torque from the damaged engine and the mangled wing skew the line. It's like trying to thread a needle in an earthquake. Masthead height now. The world narrows to a single wheelhouse window, and for a fraction of a second, I see the face of a man behind the glass, his expression a frozen mask of shock. I pull the release. Miss by meters. It's not a clean miss. It's a brutal, chaotic near collision. The sensation is like a car crash that never quite happens, that moment of infinite slowness before impact. The air over the destroyer's deck feels like it's been hammered into concrete by my passage. A radio antenna whips past my canopy with a sound like a bullwhip crack, so close I flinch. My prop wash scours paint from the ship's superstructure. The bomb, released a heartbeat too late, doesn't plunge. It shears away, skips off the water's surface like a monstrous stone, and arcs high. It detonates in a colossal geyser of white water and black smoke just astern of the ship. The shockwave is a physical blow. It slams the destroyer, lifting its stern, and flips my aircraft in a dizzying, uncontrolled corkscrew of spray and vapor. The cockpit inverts. The sky is the sea is the sky. The seat harness bites deep into my shoulders and thighs, the only thing stopping me from being thrown through the canopy. The green-gray ocean rises up to meet me, not like a surface, but like a solid wall. Impact. Sudden. Absolute. There's no transition, just a deafening roar as the water implodes the canopy. It's not a splash, it's a demolition. The cold is a physical knife to the lungs, stealing every last molecule of air. My mind is a white noise of panic as my hands fumble at the harness buckles. Fingers numb, clumsy, they finally find the release. I kick, fighting the tangled metal of the cockpit. Kicking for my life, pushing toward a light I can't see but have to believe is there. I surface into a hellscape. The air is thick with the stench of diesel and the acrid smoke of my own burning plane. The water is a churning soup of floating splinters, metal shards, and a shimmering rainbow slick of oil. The destroyer thunders past, so close I could almost touch its hull, its massive propellers churning the water into a violent froth. Men are shouting from the railings, their voices snatched away by the wind, their language foreign and harsh. The ship's guns are still firing, tracking other specks, my squadron mates, still wheeling and diving against the horizon. I expect bullets to stitch the water around me, a final, definitive end. But they don't come. The ship is already engaged in a new fight, its attention elsewhere. Smoke and flame are boiling from other parts of the convoy on the horizon. 10 more attackers, maybe more, pressing the assault. The ship steams on, leaving me behind. I bob in the wreckage, a lone survivor in the vast, indifferent ocean. My vision tunnels, my ears ring with the phantom scream of the engine and the concussive blast of the bomb. Everything is a blur. Then, a new threat, more intimate and terrifying than the anonymous flak. A gray hull, smaller this time, a patrol boat, is turning towards me. Men are on the deck, pointing. A rifle is raised, the black circle of its muzzle hovering over me, a final, cold judgment. I wait for the shot. Instead, the rifle lowers. A net arcs through the air, casting a web-like shadow over me as it falls. The rope digs into my shoulders, hauling me from the water's cold embrace onto the hot steel deck of the enemy ship. Salt water and shame streamed from my eyes. The men surrounding me, the ones I was trying to send to the bottom of the ocean just moments ago, wear masks of fury and caution. They see a killer, a fanatic. But then, through the wall of anger, a different face emerges. A medic, they call him a corpsman. He drapes a thick, coarse blanket around my shivering body. The wool is scratchy, but the warmth is an unexpected mercy. I'm a boy, barely a man, and for a second, that's all he seems to see. Another enemy sailor, his face grim and sunburnt, uncaps his canteen and tips it to my cracked lips. The water is metallic and lukewarm, but it's the most precious thing I've ever tasted. He pulls out a pack of cigarettes, offers one. His hand hesitates, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Does he offer comfort to the one who just killed his comrades? I shake my head no, unable to accept such a complex gift. The ship itself feels alive, a great metal beast groaning under the Pacific sun. The deck plates are scorched, and the air still shudders with the distant concussion of explosions. The alarms, the general quarters klaxons, rise and fall like a monstrous metallic whale song, a constant reminder that the battle isn't over. They search me. Rough hands pat me down, finding the small blade I carried for emergencies and the letter I wrote to my mother, the one I thought would be found with my body. They take both. The loss of the letter feels like a deeper violation than the capture itself. I am then led below deck, down steep ladders into the belly of the warship. The room they put me in is a small steel box. It smells of fresh paint, sweat, and something else ... fear may be mine. An officer sits across from a small table. Beside him, an interpreter. The questions begin. They aren't the brutal interrogation I expected. They're simple. Name, squadron. Where did I take off from? The officer's voice is low, measured. The interpreter translates, his tone flat. I'm certain I will be executed. Why answer? Why prolong this? I give them nothing but silence. Suddenly, the entire ship lurches violently to port. A deafening roar of cannons shakes the very bones of the vessel, and I flinch, a primal, instinctual reaction. The officer watches my reaction, a strange look on his face. Pity? Curiosity? This is the most profound confusion of my life. I trained for months to die a glorious death for the Emperor. These men, my sworn enemies, seem intent on keeping me alive. The moral vertigo is dizzying. While I sit here, above on this very deck, they are likely holding funerals for the sailors killed by my comrades, wrapping their bodies in flags and committing them to the sea. And yet, down here in this steel room, one of them comes in and presses a tin cup of hot, salty soup into my hands. I can hear the constant thrumming heartbeat of the ship's engines, a relentless rhythm. The alien cadence of their English language flows around me, a river of incomprehensible sounds. Every act of kindness feels like an accusation, a question I cannot answer. Days bleed into weeks. The world narrows, then widens again in strange ways. I hear whispers of other captured pilots, ghosts like me, scattered across the fleet. I am moved from the ship to a rear area stockade on some island I don't recognize. The tension is no longer in the scream of diving planes or the thunder of anti-aircraft guns. It's in the waiting. It's in the slow, agonizing passage of time. It's in the rumors that filter through the guards' rumors of a new and terrible bomb, a fire that consumed an entire city in a single flash. Then comes a whisper that freezes everyone, prisoner and guard alike. The Emperor himself has spoken to the nation. An event so unprecedented it feels like the world tilting on its axis. And then one morning it ends. Not with a bang, but with the crackle of a loudspeaker. I'm standing in a compound surrounded by wire fences. The sky above is a familiar, piercing blue, the same blue I dove through on my final mission. A voice, staticky and distant, details the terms of surrender. It is over. The war is over. I am alive. And that simple fact is the most terrifying reality of all. The question of what my life means now, this life I was so ready to throw away, tightens in my throat, a pressure far greater than any G-force I ever endured. He stepped off the coastal steamer, a young man made thin by war, onto the shores of a Japan silenced by defeat. Ash seemed to linger in the air. In his hand, he clutched a letter that never reached his mother, its words of farewell now a relic of a life he was meant to leave behind. Home was a ghost. The gate to his family's house hung crooked on its hinge. His mother, when she finally saw him, seemed to have aged a decade in a single year. Neighbors lingered in the street, their gazes a mixture of relief and confusion. They didn't know whether to embrace the boy who had returned or look away from the ghost who had failed his mission. He carried two burdens that day, the shame that he had missed and the guilt that he had lived. He was neither a hero nor a coward, just a survivor in a nation struggling to breathe again. Decades passed like drifting clouds. He found work in a factory, the hum of machinery, a steady rhythm against the silence in his heart. He met a woman, married, and had children. But every April, when the cherry blossoms bloomed, he avoided looking at the sky. The past was a quiet country he rarely visited. Until one day, he walked into a museum in Chiran. Glass cases glowed under soft lights, filled with the last letters of young men just like him. He saw the familiar handwriting of friends, their final, soaring words now preserved under glass. And in that quiet, reverent space, he finally chose to speak. Not to glorify, not to seek pity, but to unravel the myth that had nearly cost him everything. His story was a counterpoint to the official narrative. While he spoke of his personal terror and relief, the larger picture emerged. The brutal Okinawa campaign. Nearly 2,000 kamikaze sorties flown. Dozens of Allied ships sunk, hundreds more crippled. It was a strategy born of pure desperation, sending boys with minimal training to their deaths against overwhelming naval power. The unbearable cost was paid by both sides. The young pilots in their cockpits and the sailors burned at their guns. He wanted the world to understand that courage and poetry are no substitute for sound strategy, that his mission was never a glorious charge, but a calculated sacrifice in a losing war. Years later, at a veterans event, an elderly American sailor approached him. Through an interpreter, and then simply through gestures and shared smiles, they talked. They showed each other photographs of their children and then their grandchildren. The pilot finally admitted a secret he had held for a lifetime. In the final seconds of his dive, he saw a face on the destroyer's bridge. Just a fleeting glimpse of another man. And in that instant, his hand faltered, or perhaps fate intervened. He had lived long enough to understand that survival is its own form of duty. A duty to remember things as they were, not as the poems and songs claim them to be. A duty to warn future generations against leaders who wrap despair in the flag and call it honor. His final words were not for a camera, but for history. Quiet, plain, and heavy with the weight of a long life. I missed. I lived. I tell this story so that fewer boys will ever be asked to make that choice again. There are countless stories like this, hidden in the shadows of history. Subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from the Second World War. Thank you for watching.